was in Hawaii before I flew back. I didn't like flying. And flying over water, I just didn't like. It was bad enough floating on it, let alone flying. But I got back, and I come into San Francisco. I guess everybody knows what it was like when you got off an airplane and you're in uniform. Yeah. You got them nuts waiting for you at the gate. Well, we had some Rangers, I think it was, with us. We were in uniform. We had two officers with us. So we stayed together when we come off the plane. And there was one Ranger looked at the officer. He said, "Let us have about 5 minutes outside that gate, sir." He said, "You won't have no problem." But we all got away from it. We got I got a train. I come home on a train. I figure I seen the world. I want to see the country. So that's what I did, because I didn't think I was going to see the country again like I did. So I got home, and I started driving tractor trailer. Well, I went into the Merchant Marine. I spent 2 years in the Merchant Marine after I come home, and then I ended up driving tractor trailers. I drove tractor trailers for 42 years, doubles and triples. I got over 2.5 million miles on me, no accidents in trucks. And I'm in, they have a thing down in New Orleans for the Million Mile Club. Well, the last 18 years of my driving truck, I drove for roadway. Well, I was a yard jockey. I trained drivers for 18 years. And before that, I should have said I was married. My wife, she's the one that raised the kids. Yeah, you forget something like that every once in a while, you know. And
he's in trouble.
No, I gotta be honest with you. I got a very good wife. Carol will tell you. And she puts up with a lot with me. And she goes with me all my medical. She goes with me down to the VA and that, because the VA doctor told me, he says, "When you come down here for anything, you bring your wife, because it goes in one ear and out the other." So, getting back to my driving days, I was up in the New York Thruway. I was driving for, you might have heard of it, Old El Paso, the Mexican food. I drove all 48 states in Canada for them people. And I was up in the New York Thruway one day. And I pulled in to get fuel, paid my fuel, went in, got a shower and shave, and come out to the bar to eat. And right below me was the booze. Well, there was a gentleman in there with a big black coat on. And I looked down at him, and he looked up at me, and his wife looked at him, and I looked up at me. And I said, "Man," she said, "Where were you at in '66? I said, "I was in Vietnam." She said, "Were you on the USS Winston?" I said, "How's she know?" Well, she was the only woman we ever dropped over the side off of one of them boats. We were coming into the accommodation ladder on the side, the outboard side of the ship, and she's getting ready to step onto the ladder, and the bow hook broke. And I didn't catch it fast enough to bring the forward part in. Boy, she into the drink. Luckily, the other guy was sewing life preservers into her. But her husband got a little kick out of that. And I'm glad she was in jeans and not in a dress. But that's how she remembered me. She said the only thing that changed on you was you have a mustache now. And another thing we did stupid on the show, I wouldn't say stupid, they come out with these new gigs, you know, the gig the captain rides around in. Well, they brought these new ones in, they had a ring on them. Well, they never told us how many times that line has to go around that ring. Well, we got it over the side. 7 officers climbed on that boat, all in dress whites. Well, the boat went. We all got a good laugh out of that with them officers, you know. And it was funny. I mean, I had a good life in the Navy. I mean, when I come home, I was a chauffeur for a while. I helped put the New Jersey in commission. I took all the computer boxes down for the guns. We put the resistors together and resistant products up here at 13th and Dairy. And I was a chauffeur, so I had the privilege of driving down to Philly. And they sent me to school how to drive that car because it was a limo, and we did a lot of government contracts to get away from people. Well, I didn't think you could do so much with the car, you know, and get away with it. But I enjoyed my service. I learned a lot. I think every boy in this country should serve at least 2 to 3 years in the service.
Amen.
And I think I know I have a grandson. He was talking to me. He's only 17. He said, "Pappy, I'm graduating next year," and he's in construction. He said, "I'm thinking about going into the Army in their construction." I said, "Well, you know, the Navy got a good one, the Seabees." He said, "They do?" I said, "Oh, yeah." I said, "They got that B, you know." And he said, "Where do you go?" I said, "You go a lot more places than what the Army can give you." I think, I don't know. But that boy there, he's proud of me, you know what I mean. He got pictures of me when I did the field cross down in Annville. He got pictures of me with that, and I really enjoyed doing that with Carol and her husband and the rest of the group. I enjoy being in the parades for him. I mean, that's one thing I keep his truck for out here, this little red truck. I'm going to have it wrapped next year if I get a chance. I want to have the wall put on it. And the whole truck will be the wall. And I have 4 names. I want to have the 4 boys who were killed in Vietnam put on it in shadow. A little bit bigger than what the other one's on. But that's one thing I got offered new trucks for it, but I don't want them, you know. This is something I like doing for this chapter. And Mike McLaughlin got me into this chapter. He see me over at Dunkin' Donuts one day. I always hit that place in the morning before I come home. But there was donuts and coffee, and I always ate with, there was a Korean vet there, him and his wife. And I was so proud of them two because them two got married when they were in the Marine Corps. And you know, when you see them, they look like they were made for each other. But other than that, I had a good life with the service. I come home in one piece. I was lucky. I had a little trouble like everybody else. We had trouble with our hearing. I had cancer a couple of years ago. I beat that. Keep an eye on that. Right now I'm in process of getting hearing aids. But that's about what I have here. I mean, it wasn't long. I hope you enjoyed it. And that. Anybody got any questions?
What were your living quarters like on the move?
Tight. I mean, that ship, the yard, before I got on it, they just put air conditioning on it. Back where there was supposed to be a 5-inch cannon, it was blown off during World War II, and they never replaced it because the ship couldn't handle it anymore. So they put 2 of these big, enormous air conditioning units. And when we were standing watch on the fantail, we used to sit between there. And I mean, it was jumping with racket. And then I remember I got in trouble. I had to go up in front of the captain. That was embarrassing. I was standing quarterdeck watch, and they had a new ensign come. He was coming down the dock, you know, and he's looking at the ship, and he looked up at me. I'm looking down at him. And he looked at me and he said, "Hey, watch, come down and carry my bags up." And I was on the deck with a 30-year chief, an African-American chief. He looked at me, he said, Parthemore, tell him to go to hell. So I looked down at him, I told him to go to hell. Excuse me, Father. But he come running up that accommodation ladder, and he didn't understand when that ship rolls, that accommodation ladder. Well, he went head over tin cups on that thing. I mean, he scuffed his knees and everything else. When he got up there, the first thing he did, he poked me. And the chief told me, he said, that's a no-no. And he said, you're on report. And I said, oh, yes, sir. And that's all I said. Chief just, I went back to my stand and my watch. He carried his bags down to where he was supposed to go. Next day, one of the officers, third class petty officer, come down. He said, George, he said, what the hell did you do last night? He said, there's an incident here. It's got you on report. I said, yeah. I said, I told him to go to hell. He said, you what? I said, yeah. And he said, well, the captain wants to see you. Get in dress blues. I said, oh, nuts. That's when we have the dress blues with no pinstriping on it and that. It was just a plain blues. I went up there. The chief met me outside the door. And we knocked on the door, or the hatch, whatever you want to call it. And the captain told us to come in. I'm standing there. And he looks at me. He says, Parthemore, did you tell this officer to go to hell? I said, yes, sir. He said, why? I said, the chief told me to. It went to the chief, you know. He'd back you up 100%, that chief would. And when we used to go on the beach, if we could get out and get in civvies, I'd go with him, because I knew I was going to be in for a good time. And Willie Brown was an African-American boy. I couldn't make it home on a Christmas one time. So he says, well, why don't you go home with me? So I went home with him. Here his daddy is a Baptist minister. And Willie asked him, said, Dad, can we borrow the car? And, yeah, you can take the car. Well, Willie and I got drunk. And we were both underage. And we come back, we parked the car in the front yard. Well, when we got up in the morning, when we opened our eyes up, we were in a shower. His three sisters had us in the shower, sobering us up. We come down to breakfast. And I didn't know what to say to that man. I was embarrassed for one thing. And he says, you boys have a good time? Yes, sir. Well, we ended up in church that day. I mean, but you know, like I say, I had a lot of friends out there. There's a few fellas that were on that ship that passed away now, that were with me on that ship. But you know, I enjoyed it. And yes, Bill.
George.
Yes.
Time to toot your own horn, brother.
Yeah.
My name is Bill Schweigel. I'm the first vice president of Vietnam Veterans of America at 542. George, I know for a fact, is deeply involved in the American Legion out in Steelton. He's also deeply involved in our activities here at Chapter 542. My question to George is, where do you see yourself in the next 5 years?
Getting older, for one thing.
Doing what?
Me, I like to do more for the chapter. You know, like I say, I got my truck. I try to do as much as I can for them. In the parades, I go to car shows. I got 5 trophies for it already. And a lot of people ask me about it, because what I do when I have the car set up at a car show or something, I have a POW table there. People ask me about it. Even when I was working over at Home Depot, I set the POW table up over there. At the end of the aisle, if you're ever in the Carlisle, over in over Carlisle Pike there at the Home Depot, I worked there at nighttime on the freight team. I had a 6 by 10 foot flag hanging down that one end cap. As soon as you go in the door, you couldn't miss it. right in front of a big chandelier, made it look good. And they got a lot of letters to Georgia, where the company is based at, about that POW table layout. And I got to thank Carol and, for helping me with that. Because if it wasn't for them, I wouldn't know what it was all about. And I'm still learning things like the flags, what they mean, like the red POW flag. I didn't know what that meant, I wear a tie all the time when I have that. And what it means is, for all the Veterans Day, you fly that POW flag. And I make sure the schools get POW flags. I go down to Saturday's market and I'll buy them out. And I'll make sure all the schools, in fact, I got Prince of Peace Church flying a POW with the U.S. flag. And I always put flags up. On Veterans Day, or what is the first one, Memorial Day, and they're up all year, all summer down at the church. There's 15 flags in the garden down there. And anybody got any more questions?
I got one for you. 2 years in the Merchant Marines, you see any more of the world?
No. I went as far as Texas, down the Sabine River. And there was 35 of us on that ship. That's all that was on that ship. And that ship was like 600 feet long. And I was qualified helmsman. I steered. And when they used to break you away from the dock, it was funny. When you loaded up with oil, the Sabine River run this way, and they force you this way. They break you loose up the forward part. You swing that ship around, and then you start down that river. And you got to know what you're doing coming down them rivers, and that because you're not hooked up to a tugboat.